Viv Govender from Lahumo Capital on the market's reaction to the Trump victory.
Why did we have this almost disbelief initially that Trump wouldn't win this by investors and markets?
Because almost all the polls were saying he wasn't going to win. This is different from Brexit. In Brexit, the markets and pundits were saying, no, it's a 90% chance of remain, it's going to be such an easy victory. But the polls were saying it's a close race. This time around, the polls weren't saying it's a close race. I mean, you had the New York Times poll giving him a 1 in 6 chance of winning. We had one poll by some professor at Princeton or something giving me a 1 in 100 chance of winning. I think the closest one of the mainstream polling things was Nate Silver at 538, giving him something like a 1 in 3 chance of winning. There was one poll that was the LA Times poll that was actually giving him what turned out to be the actual correct view. But their own editors at the magazine, at the newspaper, were actually so disbelieving of the poll that they kept on giving reasons why their own poll, conducted by their own pollsters, was wrong. So their poll would come out and say Trump's 1% ahead, and they will come out in the editorial and say, no, this can't be true. It was just such an unusual poll, but it turned out to be the only one that was correct.
Okay, so let's just talk about a road to some sort of stabilizing. We look at the Europe at the moment now. One expected those losses, margin losses, to be bigger. They weren't that bad. Markets are down, given the Dow and the DAX and so forth. So what do you think the markets are doing now in terms of digesting exactly what happened? Donald Trump is the president of the United States. What's going through the minds of investors at the moment?
Well, the big fear is some of the political things he said around trade. Cancelling trade deals, engaging with basically a trade war or currency war with China. Those are the kind of things that are really fearful. Maybe some of the other stuff he's talked about, immigration, banning all Muslim immigrants or all Muslim travel to the country, is also something that I think is something that may affect the market. But that being said, if you had to look at the actual political structure of the US right now, a Republican president, a Republican Congress, a Republican Senate, normally those things are positive for the economy because it tends to deal with less taxes and possibly in this case even more government spending, because historically, not that the Democrats don't want to spend, but they've been blocked from spending by the Republicans. This time around, with no basically Democrat anywhere blocking them, or basically that could take credit for good things, the Republicans have no incentive to block things that might benefit the country. And so we could really see a large infrastructure or government spending program occur in the Americas basically over the next couple of years. Longer term, who knows what that might do to their basically budget deficit, but in the short to medium term, it could be a very big stimulus for their economy.
Yeah. So when we look at what happened on the JSE at 9 o'clock, when everything opened up and we woke up, we saw gold high, 4.1% going to 5, the gold price. We saw banks down. I mean, the banks were hit by this news. Just try and explain to us the logic here as to why banks on the JSE took a hit from this.
Because banks are about confidence. That's what they are. Banks are a measure of confidence and certainty. So we have a run on the bank, it's because there's less confidence in the bank, would go down without confidence. Banks just literally can't exist as institutions without confidence. And with something like Trump's rise or unexpected rise, people were surprised. They didn't have time to digest it, and they basically were looking at anything that was dependent on confidence to be hurt by it. So that's why we saw, for instance, emerging market currencies under pressure, the peso under pressure, the banking sector under pressure, and gold rising quite massively because it's a safe haven, and some other currencies like the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen also, safe haven currencies benefiting.
The rand could have been weaker, though. It's now sitting at 13.53. There were some people earlier this morning and late last night saying, if there was a Trump victory, you could see it approaching the 14 mark. Not the case. It did lose some momentum, but we're still sitting at 13.53.
Yeah, but remember, it's against the US dollar that's actually weaker.
Yeah.
So the US dollar is weakened dramatically because that's basically one of the things that the people are fearful about, because Trump has come out and said things like, for instance, we can basically be not as strict about paying back our debt repayments as we have been historically. People always talk about the fact that he went bankrupt so many times, left so many creditors in the lurch. He's used similar kind of talk around the US bonds, etc. And that's obviously negative for the currency. You can basically create a downgrade by having political instability, or at least lacking the willingness to pay your bonds. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw the rand be reasonably strong against the dollar, because the dollar was weaker.
The highly anticipated interest rate decision in December in the United States. With the Trump victory, reports are saying that chances are now diminishing. I mean, I just want to know, what does that mean for South Africa? We obviously wouldn't be in favor of having the interest rates go up in the United States. What's your take now on the interest rate hike in the US that, hope's looking more on the diminishing side, and how that relates to South Africa.
Yeah, especially if market instability continues for a little while longer, I think the Fed will take any excuse. I mean, remember Janet Yellen is a very, very dovish Fed head. I mean, she's more dovish than Bernanke was, and he was considered to be helicopter Bern because he basically was talking about skids giving money out to boost the economy. So any excuse that she gets, she'll probably take not to raise rates. And I think this is an excuse that if the markets basically cooperate and are a bit more unstable for a couple of weeks, I think she will definitely have the excuse that she needs to delay a rate hike. And we in South Africa would benefit from that. We don't need a rate hike at the moment.
How quick, very quickly, very briefly, how quick do you see stability returning to the markets?
Look, I do think, we may have a week or two like the Brexit event where things are a bit nervous. But I think over time, look at his speech. His speech was very different from his campaigning, very conciliatory, very stable, etc. If he comes up with some reasonable policies, we have some reasonable assurances from the Republican Party that he's going to be under control, etc. We could see confidence return very quickly. And actually, I think he might actually be a positive for the market in the medium term, 6 months, 9 months down the line. We could see the US economy doing much better, at least in the period that we're talking about, because of course he's going to be spending a lot more while raising less taxes. That could be bad in the longer term, but in the shorter term it could be very positive because it's very stimulative for the economy.
Viv Govender from Lahuma